casual, right? We are casually just sitting in $961, as you can see over here on Nasdaq with the whole team. And this trade is absolutely one of my best trades, especially looking at last week. That wasn't so good. Last week I closed out the whole week with just 350 pips. That's like Monday to Friday, just 350 pips. One of my worst weeks. And this week is just starting, right? Today is just Wednesday, and I'm just even looking at this trade right now on the Nasdaq. I already see another opportunity of entering. It's either I'm going to add positions at the zone if I see a rejection right over here, or I'm going to close this trade because this is our take profit 18,400 in the inner circle. I did drop this signal on Monday just after that Asian session crash, and we've been holding the trade ever since, right? Absolutely worth it. $1,000 with just one single trade by just being patient. And you can see that we already have our stop loss in entry right over here, right? It's just protecting the trade now. So even if it reverses, right, I'm not watching. The most I can lose out of this trade is $500, right? You can see that is $528 if it hits my stop loss. Absolutely beautiful trade. First take profit is always 40 pips, the second 100 pips, and then I like to put my stop loss within the trade, like protects my trade, right? Because it can just reverse, and I'm not trying to be in this trade for too long, right? So as you can see right over here, after it gave us 40 pips, 100 pips, it just kept shooting up to the top. It formed this little resistance zone right over here. So obviously I know that the market is going to want to play around at this zone right over here. So that's why I have my stop loss at that point, because I know that if it goes back down and breaks this zone, there's a high chance that it's going to go back to my entry point, and you really don't want to do that. It's just like wasting pips, right? You've already made the profit, so what's the point of letting the trade go back into drawdown, right? So this has absolutely been a great trade. And earlier today I was experimenting with gold. So gold is like my scalping pair, right? When I need just a little bit of a quick entry, quick in and out, I'm gonna go and look for an entry on gold. So I did find something. I used the break of the trend line strategy right over there, right? So trend lines are really powerful to all of those that actually need that validation, right? Trend lines, in my opinion, they are really good. They can be something that could add an edge to your strategy if you just input the trend lines, know how to draw them nicely week to week, body to body, and then know how to interpret each and every trend line, and also know how to include those trend within the trends, right? So I had my trend line drawn nicely, and then I was having my fingers crossed for the candlestick to actually close outside of the trend line. That would have been my confirmation if it closed outside of the trend line. Now it shows me that the trend line has been disrespected and the market wants to continue pushing up. So now the thing about this strategy that I'm showing you right over here is simple, right? I want you to actually monitor the trade as it goes, right? So as the market moves, yes, the fact that you got a really good setup at the beginning doesn't change the fact that the market is going to keep moving and forming new setups. So you should still be in the trade monitoring the new setups that are being formed. So over here I did see the market forming a new trend line at the zone, right? So I drew my trend line, and then I'm already starting to interpret that trend line, right? So I'm saying that if the price gets to this trend line, it has a chance of breaking out of it or rejecting off that trend line. So now if it rejects, I'm going to exit the buying position that I'm going to exit the buying position that I'm in. If it breaks out, I'm going to add a position, right? So that's exactly how you just have to trade when you're scalping, right? So it did break out, and then I added a position right over here, and then the trade moved, played around with me for a little bit, right? And then it got to a certain level. So I am still interpreting the charts as we go, right? And then obviously at this level, I was thinking that the market is going to reject, right? It's going to reject at the zone. There's a high chance. So over here on the 1 minute time frame, you can see that another trend line was formed, and I absolutely did not ignore that. So the moment it broke out of that trend line, as you can see right over here, then I knew that this is my exit point. The market has a chance of pushing even lower, right? So I did panic a little bit. I exited my first position right over there, and then waited for the 5 minute resistance candlestick to close. So when it closed bearish on the 5 minute, I just knew that I have to exit the whole trade. I did leave with a good $40, even though it's not what I wanted, right? I could have held the trade and risked going back into loss, but I took my $40 for the day. 40 pips, not bad. I was done, and I'm already out of the trade, right? So that was a highlight of the morning for me today on gold as I was looking for a scalping trade. But obviously you already know that the Nasdaq trade is what is dominating. Let's just go onto a chart and talk about Nasdaq for a brief moment. Let's just make our screen a little bigger so that we have a big picture of what is happening, right over here. What's happening right now, you can see that the Nasdaq is actually struggling to break this zone, right? So what does that tell you? You can see that we had a gap right over here before that Asian session crash, right? We had a gap at this particular zone, and we are safe to say the gap has been closed, right? So I was targeting this zone and I'm satisfied, right? Even if it goes back now, we're already like closing the gap, right? So what we're looking at today is actually this market breaking out of the zone. You already know that if it breaks out of the zone, I'm not going to go into, buys real quick, because I can see that there's a lot of resistance at this zone, right? So now the thing about me is, if you go back to all my videos, I actually just trade the same way, right? I'm not going to change anything about the way I trade, because this is my strategy, right? That is exactly what I do when I'm looking at these markets, right? So there's a high chance that this market is going to reject off of this level, right? Because we can see that there are a lot of buyers and sellers at this particular spot, right? So for me, in as much as I am biased to buying positions, right, I don't want to go into sells on Nasdaq currently because of the trend. You already know that I am just a big fan of going with the trend, right? So the sell might be a really short sell. I had one of my students yesterday, a really good student, approaching this zone, and then they wrote to me, they were like, I'm looking at this market and I can see that we have a zone where the market can reject off. They were like, they want to sell this market. And I was like, I am in buys. You already know that I am in buys on Nasdaq, but you should trade what you are seeing. And then the fact that you're going to go against the trend, right, you should be careful. You know what they did? They went into this trade at this absolutely beautiful zone. Look at how they caught this nice movement, right? So in as much as I am in a buying trade, right? So I'm in a buy right over here to this zone, and then I did not exit my buy, but someone else managed to see a selling trade, and then they entered at this zone and then caught this trade. So I already told them that they shouldn't stay in this market for too long, and obviously you can already see that this zone is a resistance zone, so they exited this trade real quick, right? And then it just absolutely went back to the top, right? It did not disturb my buying position. It just goes to show that in trading, it's all about, what works for you. You should actually trade what you see, trade your strategy regardless of what anyone else is saying. And my strategy personally does not allow me to trade against the trend, right? I don't like that. I don't like that feeling when the market is going to just reverse and I'm not sure of what can happen. So I'd rather wait for buying positions on this Nasdaq, right? So if the market is going to just, break out of this zone, and then I'll have to look for another good entry, right? So obviously you can see it has closed off the gap, right? So there's a high chance of it rejecting right over here. So if it breaks out of this current zone where it is right now on Nasdaq, right, I'm not going to go in for the buy straight. I want to go in for the buys if it breaks out of this zone. This is a 4-hour candle. These are just, a lot of 30-minute candles, right? This zone just put together to form one little zone. All of this noise right here on lower time frames is just put together, right? And then it's just showing on one little green candlestick on a 4-hour time frame. So if it breaks out of this zone right over here, it breaks out of this noise, then I can safely say that the buyers are still in control of the market and I'm going to go in for the buys. But if it does not, right, then it just rejects off of this level. There's a high chance that it's going to actually drop. And then if that's your trading style, you could literally take this trade and write it down to the bottom right over there, right? For me, right, I'm going to wait for this trend line right over here. You can already see what I'm talking about, right? So the buyers, so imagine you go into this sell and then it drops off for this level and then it probably comes to this zone. This is not worth it. It's not a good risk to reward ratio because there's a high chance that this market can reject off of this level and then just keep pushing up to the top, right? So, or it can also break out, right? So there's a chance, right? It rejected at this zone. It rejected at this zone. It also rejected a little bit at this zone. So there's a chance that it might reject off of this level and then just, shoot back up to the top. Or there's a chance of it breaking out. Now, this is a chance. It's not guaranteed. So if you are going to take a sell at this level at this level, using that small chance of it breaking out of the zone, I don't think that is a wise trade, right? So instead of that, I would wait for it to actually reject off of this level, also off of this level, right? So we're not going to be considering all of the levels, right? So obviously it just takes us back to a weekly analysis again. So as you can see, we'll say it breaks out of this level right over here, and then it just goes down, right? And then there's a chance that it will bounce back off of this zone. It will bounce back off of this level, right? And then just go up to the top, or it just breaks, retests, and then, keep pushing down to the bottom. But nothing too crazy also on the Nasdaq, because, we have already, capitalized on this particular trade. Absolutely beautiful one. Then that's just where I'm standing currently with my Nasdaq positions, right? I'm not going to rush into any trades if I'm not sure. But if you do trade the sells, why not? Any strategy works. Like I showed you, I have a student that took a sell whilst I was in the buy, and they absolutely made profit, right? But if you did enjoy that video, don't forget to hit the like button, turn your post notifications, and subscribe to the channel. You feel me? With that, it's been Tino, and I'll see you in the next lit video.